Imagine a country so rich in natural resources that it could easily be one of the most prosperous in the world. Yet, paradoxically, it struggles with extreme poverty, rampant corruption, and a history stained by bloody wars. Mozambique is that place. A land filled with diamonds, gold, natural gas, and one of the largest ruby reserves on the planet. Yet millions of people live on less than $1 a day. Now, picture a scandal so massive that it plunged the country into one of the worst economic crises in its history. In 2016, Mozambique became the stage for one of Africa's biggest corruption schemes. Billions of dollars in undisclosed debt. The result? Runaway inflation, economic collapse, and thousands of people sinking deeper into poverty, while politicians and businessmen line their pockets. And as if that weren't enough, another threat has been growing within its borders. Terrorist groups ravage villages, burn down homes, kidnap civilians, and spread fear across the north of the country. Cabo Delgado, a province home to vast natural gas reserves, has turned into a battlefield where innocent people are caught in the crossfire. But is Mozambique just a land of crisis and devastation? Or is there another side to the story, one that few people know? A vibrant land, filled with breathtaking landscapes, a fascinating culture, and resilient people who fight every day to rewrite their own history. Let's dive deep into this land of contrasts and uncover the real Mozambique. Mozambique is located in southeastern Africa, bordered by the Indian Ocean, giving it a stunning coastline that stretches for more than 2,500 kilometers. It shares borders with Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Eswatini, making it a key player in the region's geopolitics. Covering approximately 801,000 square kilometers, it's one of the largest countries on the continent, rich in biodiversity and natural resources. The climate is predominantly tropical, with two distinct seasons, a hot and rainy period from November to April, and a dry, milder season from May to October. But this prime location also comes with serious downside. Mozambique is frequently hit by devastating cyclones. One of the worst was Cyclone Idai in 2019, which wiped out entire cities and left thousands dead. The country's population exceeds 32 million, with most people living in rural areas, relying on subsistence farming. But the inequality is staggering. While the capital, Maputo, boasts modern skyscrapers and advanced infrastructure, many parts of the countryside still struggle with basic necessities like clean water and electricity. And there's more. Mozambique holds a strategic position in global trade, especially because of its ports, which serve as crucial gateways for landlocked neighboring countries. But does this really benefit the people? Or are the nation's vast riches being exploited by a select few, while the majority fights to survive? To understand this, we need to take a closer look at Mozambique's history, a history written in blood, resistance, and betrayal. Mozambique is a country whose history is marked by resistance, suffering, and an endless fight for sovereignty. Before the arrival of European colonizers, the region was home to various Bantu peoples who built powerful kingdoms and established trade routes with Arabs and Persians. For centuries, Islamic merchants controlled the Mozambican coast, trading gold, ivory, and slaves for spices and textiles. Coastal cities like Ilha de Mozambique became thriving centers of prosperity and cultural diversity. But everything changed drastically in the 16th century when the Portuguese arrived and took control of the region. For over 400 years, Mozambique was drained by a brutal colonial regime that exploited its people in plantations, mines, and the transatlantic slave trade. Portuguese rule didn't just strip the country of its wealth. It also crushed its cultural identity and enforced a ruthless system of segregation. Oppression fueled resistance. And by the 1960s, liberation movements began to rise. The most powerful among them was Frelimo, the Mozambique Liberation Front, which launched a guerrilla war against the colonizers. After years of conflict and increasing international pressure, Portugal finally granted Mozambique its independence in 1975. But freedom didn't bring peace. The country immediately plunged into a bloody civil war between Frelimo, now in power, and Renamo, a rebel group backed by foreign forces. For 16 years, Mozambique became a battlefield of massacres, destruction, and a staggering death toll, leaving deep scars on its people. The war only ended in 1992, but its effects are still felt today. Yet, despite this turbulent past, Mozambique holds incredible potential. Beyond its vast natural resources, the country is home to some of the most breathtaking and untouched landscapes in Africa. And that's exactly what we're about to explore. The hidden treasures that make this land an unexpected paradise for travelers. If there's one side of Mozambique that truly dazzles the world, it's tourism. The country boasts one of the most stunning coastlines in Africa. Think crystal clear waters, untouched islands, and vibrant marine life. And the best part? It's still off the radar of mass tourism, offering a truly authentic and exclusive experience for those who visit. Let's start with the Bazaruto Archipelago, a slice of paradise in the Indian Ocean. Made up of 5 islands with powdery white sand and mesmerizing turquoise waters. This is the perfect escape for anyone seeking peace and a deep connection with nature. Here, you can dive alongside turtles, dolphins, and even the rare dugong, a gentle marine mammal on the brink of extinction. Another place that feels straight out of a dream is Ilha de Mozambique. This tiny island was the first Portuguese settlement in East Africa and is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its narrow streets, colonial mansions, and ancient fortresses whisper stories of a rich yet turbulent past, while its pristine beaches offer the perfect getaway for those looking to unwind. But Mozambique isn't just about beaches. For wildlife lovers, Gorongosa National Park is one of Africa's hidden gems. After being ravaged by civil war, this incredible sanctuary is making a remarkable comeback. Today, it's home to lions, elephants, buffalo, and an astonishing variety of birds. It's a must-visit for anyone wanting to experience a true safari, without the crowds of more famous African parks. And of course, there's Maputo, the country's vibrant capital. With its colonial architecture, bustling street markets filled with colors and flavors, and a lively nightlife, the city is where tradition meets modernity. It's an essential stop for any traveler. Mozambique has enormous tourism potential, but does this wealth truly benefit its people? To answer that, we need to take a closer look at another crucial aspect of the country, its economy. And this is where Mozambique's contradictions become even more striking. Mozambique is a country of extremes when it comes to its economy. On one side, you have an insane amount of natural wealth, gold, diamonds, coal, natural gas, and one of the largest ruby reserves on the planet. On the other, you have a population where more than half of the people live below the poverty line. How can a country so rich also be so poor? The answer lies in its economic structure. Mozambique's economy heavily depends on exporting natural resources, mainly to China and European countries. The problem? The profits from these riches are concentrated in the hands of foreign corporations and a small political elite that reinvests very little into the well-being of its own people. The result? A massive social divide. While few live in luxury, millions of Mozambicans struggle to afford even the basics. The minimum wage in the country is around 5,200 meticais per month, about $80. Meanwhile, the cost of living, especially in major cities like Maputo, is surprisingly high. Renting a simple apartment can cost more than 25,000 meticais, about $400, making it nearly impossible for the average worker to live with dignity. And when it comes to food, prices are just as shocking. A kilo of rice costs around 80 meticais, $1.30, while a liter of milk goes for 90 meticais, $1.50. To make matters worse, runaway inflation is constantly driving prices up, eating away at people's purchasing power. And if that wasn't enough, the country was rocked by one of Africa's biggest financial scandals, the hidden debt scandal, where over $2 billion vanished from public funds, plunging Mozambique into an unprecedented economic crisis. The inequality is staggering. While multinational corporations extract billions in resources, countless families still rely on subsistence farming just to survive. But that's not the only issue haunting the country. Beneath this economic crisis, there's an even darker reality: corruption, terrorism, and crimes that leave the population trapped in a broken system. And that's exactly what we're about to dive into next. If Mozambique's economy already exposes deep inequalities, the country's social reality reveals an even darker picture. Corruption, political scandals, terrorism, and brutal crimes are part of daily life for millions of Mozambicans, trapped in a broken system led by politicians who seem more interested in filling their own pockets than in securing the country's future. The biggest scandal in Mozambique's history was a hidden debt crisis, a massive corruption scheme that drained over $2 billion from public funds. Money that was supposed to boost the economy instead ended up in the bank accounts of corrupt politicians and businessmen. The result? A financial collapse. The currency plummeted, prices skyrocketed, and thousands were pushed into poverty overnight. But corruption isn't the only nightmare haunting the country. In northern Mozambique, the Cabo Delgado province faces an even more terrifying threat. Terrorist groups linked to ISIS have been wreaking havoc, attacking villages, beheading civilians, and turning the region into a war zone. Why? To seize control over the area's massive natural gas reserves. And once again, innocent Mozambicans are the ones paying the price, trapped between fear and a government that has abandoned them. And as if that weren't enough, Mozambique is also plagued by organized crime. Kidnappings, drug trafficking, and political assassinations are common, especially in Maputo. Businessmen and journalists who dare to expose corruption often disappear or are murdered under mysterious circumstances. Given this chaotic reality, the question is Mozambique doomed to an endless cycle of corruption and violence? Or is there a real chance for change? The answer might surprise you, because despite everything, this country has something no crisis can ever destroy: a resilient people, a determined youth, and a future that is still waiting to be rewritten. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Despite all the corruption, violence, and inequality, Mozambique still pulses with an incredible energy. Its people, shaped by centuries of struggle and resilience, refuse to give up. The Mozambican youth is more connected, outspoken, and determined than ever to reshape the country's future. Social movements, fearless journalists, and activists are exposing abuses, demanding transparency and justice, and fighting for real change. And beyond that, Mozambique's potential is enormous. If its natural wealth were properly managed, if education and infrastructure received real investment, and if corruption were truly tackled, this country could become an African powerhouse. And there are signs of hope. Some initiatives are already working to revive the economy. Sustainable tourism projects are bringing income to local communities, and international pressure on the government is growing. History has shown that Mozambique has survived wars, colonization, natural disasters, and economic crises. And if there's one thing this country has proven over the centuries, it never gives up. So now the question is, are we about to witness a new chapter in Mozambique's history? Could this land of extremes finally find balance between its wealth and its people? The future is still being written. But one thing is certain, Mozambique may be in the shadows now, but has everything it needs to shine like never before.